Call the special orders meeting, the Winnebago County Board to order. Supposedly everyone's checked in that is here this evening. So if you'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Remain standing for the invocation. Supervisor O'Brien.
Our Heavenly Father, we come before you today with grateful hearts as we begin this new year. Thank you for the gift of life, for the opportunities ahead, and for bringing us together this evening. Lord, we lift up those among us in our families who are sick or struggling. Restore health and peace where it is needed most. As we start this meeting, we ask for your wisdom to guide our decisions, clarity in our discussions, and creativity in our plans. May this new year be marked by growth, unity, and success, not just in our work, but in how we serve and support each other within our county. We trust you to lead us forward. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Amen.
We're not sure if we're signed in. We didn't have a green entry button. Oh, sorry.
I went all the way back.
Did you?
It was on there. I did twice, but that's not. Yeah, but they were fucking around. Huh?
Oh,
They still didn't have it.
it's there now. Absolute apologies.
Oh, it wasn't there before, it just got there. Okay.
Is everybody good who signed in?
Thank you.
The clerk says that she has you up here, both of you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Vice Chairman Fari, the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Carried. This time for public comments, time will be allowed for persons to present to express their opinion on any resolution or ordinance that appears on the agenda, as well as any matter over which this body has jurisdiction. Pursuant to Rule 6.4 of the Rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors, the County Board Chair shall limit all public comments to 2 minutes. I believe there's tablets back there. Please sign your name. Go to one of the microphones, state your name and address if you would like to say anything this evening. Anyone wishing to speak this evening? Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Not hearing anyone. Is there anyone on Zoom? There's no one on Zoom. That part is closed. Communication from County Clerk. We have nothing there. That part's closed. Report from committees, commissions, and boards. Anyone from there? Supervisor Patterson.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm typing instead of.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was just determined today that we will not be having the County Veteran Service Commission this month. Just wanted to make that announcement. We will not be having the County Veteran Service Commission this month. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Committee, commissions, or boards? Anyone else? And that part will be closed. County Board Chairs report. Excused tonight will be Supervisor Stafford, Bureau, Powers, Reinke, and Gilbertson, and that's all that called me, unless someone else can think of somebody else that called them. And as of 5 o'clock today, and that's ends it, County Board Supervisors, there's 8 supervisors with non-candidacy, 15 contested races, which one will be a primary in District 14. So that'll be the count. It'll be it's all on the web page. If you want to go look, you can see the names and who's on there and go from there and follow it along from there. And I'm going to keep moving right along before that snow and rain comes in and hits us. Presentations, PFAS, I believe Corporation Counsel is going to,
I'm going to introduce the firm,
okay?
okay? So are they on now? Okay, so I'd like to introduce you all to Jason Julius and Chris Edwards from the firm of Barron and Budd out of Dallas, Texas. I would think it's a little bit warmer down there than here tonight. They are trial attorneys who pursue environmental torts on behalf of their clients. They have had a very successful track record. In one case against 3M, they recovered $12 billion for a case involving contaminated drinking water. Jason and Chris will be giving a presentation to you tonight about joining AFFF, which stands for Aqueous Film Forming Foam, and it's basically products multi-district litigation. So last fall, counsel for the Wisconsin Counties Association notified corporation counsels across the state about this litigation, and it is akin to the opioid litigation we joined probably now 5 or 6 years ago. And so PFAS, as probably most of you know, was long manufactured as a component for this AFFF, which is basically a product used to control and extinguish aviation fuel. And certain companies manufactured this product, including 3M, DuPont, a number of companies. The argument that is being made is that these companies knew or should have known that these toxic chemicals would contaminate the environment and resist natural degradation. So essentially, the soil was contaminated with firefighting retardant. So basically, Jason and Chris are going to be giving you a rundown of what is potentially involved. They are serving as national counsel with ATOLES, which is the Wisconsin Counties Association attorneys, serving as local counsel, and the various separate corporation counsels throughout the state also serving and watching the litigation. So without further ado, I should also note, Director Shell from the airport called me this afternoon and told me he had determined that Brown County and Eau Claire are also pursuing this litigation. So that's another piece to add, and I'm sure Jason and Chris can fill out more of this information. So without further ado, Jason and Chris.
Evening, everyone, and thank you for the introduction. My name is Jason Julius. I'm a shareholder with the firm of Barron and Budd. Alongside me is senior attorney Chris Edwards, also with Barron and Budd. We both we have a presentation. I'm not sure if you all can see it or if it's able to be put up on the screen, a PowerPoint.
Sharing it right now.
Okay. We are part of the environmental group at Barron and Budd, the environmental law group. There are 17 attorneys within our group at the firm. Our group focuses almost entirely and certainly primarily on representing public entities and cost recovery actions. And when I say public entities, I mean entities like states, counties, municipalities, smaller districts like water districts and fire protection districts. Our main goal is to assist public entities in recovering the costs for actions that they are not responsible for, actions that have been laid upon them by the acts of others, particularly corporations in the environmental space, meaning companies who have produced products in the past that are now contaminating our clients' properties and water. In that regard, we've represented public entities in cases related to contaminants like MTBE, atrazine, TCP, TCE, PCBs, And obviously the one at the forefront right now is PFAS, which you heard a description of. We also work on cases related to oil spills and wildfires, particularly in California and in the West, related to wildfires. Through these actions, we've recovered to date approximately $3 billion for our own clients, but have been responsible for the settlement of significantly larger amounts on a national level in these multi-district litigation settings. Some of those settlements include the $12.5 billion settlement that was discussed related to PFAS for water providers. We also have hundreds of millions in settlements related to PCB claims for California cities and now states across the country. The slideshow's a little out of date. We have been named the Environmental Group of the Year by Law 360 in both 2020, 2024, and 2025. So we're very proud of the work we do on behalf of our public entity clients. We also work with the firm of Cosich, Summich, Parciola, and Taylor. We work hand in hand. They do a lot of the exact same work. They work primarily for public entities in complex environmental litigations. They've had very recent success, a $750 million judgment in a case in Louisiana. In some of these same types of claims, TCE, oil spills, general environmental damage claims. The way this would work is if you allowed us to represent you, it would be we would be working hand in hand. So you would be represented by both Baron & Budd and Cosich as a joint venture on these cases. A little bit, and I don't think I need to get too much further into this, but the thrust of these claims relates to the use of AFFF at airport facilities and otherwise within our clients' properties. AFFF is commonly referred to as firefighting foam. It is when you see a news story about a plane crash and they're spraying foam on it, that is AFFF, and it historically was AFFF. The foam, though, is not only used during crash-related incidents or emergency responses, it's also trained with. In order for the firefighters to use it in those emergency responses, they have to train with it. And that training, they historically used foam in open spaces at airports and fire training facilities. The foam was then essentially hosed off into the adjacent soil. The chemicals within the AFFF that were hosed off into the soil migrated into groundwater and into the soil itself, causing ongoing, long-standing contamination problems for entities who have used the foam historically. PFAS is also not only used in firefighting foam. It is used in everyday products. It historically was used in everyday products, nonstick cookware, waterproof apparel. Takeout containers from places like McDonald's and Burger King historically all had PFAS. Those PFAS compounds, known as forever chemicals, are now finding their way into soil and groundwater across the country and have become a significant, I'm sure you're aware of, a significant issue that water providers and public entities are having to deal with at their own cost in order to remove these contaminants and prevent them from being introduced to their constituents. Like I said, some of the major sources of PFAS are firefighting foam, and that is the focus of the litigation that is ongoing. Lawsuits started to be filed against the manufacturers of AFFF 7 to 8 years ago. Those manufacturers include 3M, DuPont, Tyco, BASF, some of the major chemical manufacturers throughout the country. The litigation has been ongoing again for 7 years, but it is broken up into several distinct types of litigation. That includes drinking water claims, property damage claims, firefighter training facility claims, airport claims. And then there are claims by individuals for personal injury. There are also claims by states and territories for natural resource damages. All of those types of claims have been consolidated into one courtroom in South Carolina before Richard Gergel in federal court in South Carolina, which is where our lead partner, Scott Summey, has taken on the role as plaintiff's lead counsel, both for the litigation itself, but also for the mediation and resolution aspects of these cases, which is where the $12.5 billion settlement with 3M came from. Again, 3M was sued along with DuPont, Tyco, BASF for AFFF related damages. The first types of claims that were litigated were drinking water claims. So for any public entity that was serving drinking water to customers, a class was formed for resolution against with 3M. 3M agreed to pay between 10.5 and 12.5 billion dollars to resolve the drinking water claims only. What they did not resolve though were claims related to PFAS contamination in soil and basically anything other than drinking water. So soil claims, for instance, claims related to firefighting foam use at airports where soil is contaminated remain intact against 3M and all the other defendants, and that litigation is ongoing. The court right now is focusing on personal injury claims. The property damage claims for places like airports and firefighter training facilities is also being litigated. We don't have a specific time frame as to when those may get to trial or when settlements may occur, but because the discovery related to the defendants has already occurred in the previous 7 years of this litigation, the turnaround time for getting those claims to trial and potentially to resolution should be significantly shorter than 7 years. Again, I hate to put any time frame on it because, as you know, these things can take time, but I suspect it would be a much shorter time frame than the 7 years that has already occurred as it relates to the drinking water and now personal injury claims. One of the things to keep in mind is when a lawsuit is filed in this case, because this is an MDL, there is not individual discovery expected for any new plaintiff other than a plaintiff fact sheet, which is essentially a 3-page questionnaire that needs to be filled out. But unless you are selected as a bellwether for one of the property damage claims, you do not have pending discovery, meaning there will not be depositions, there will not be large-scale document production required. It will be a very de minimis effort going forward with respect to discovery once you are filed in the MDL for a property damage or claim or otherwise. That's one important fact that our clients want to know. Obviously, employees at the county have jobs that they have to get done, and one of those jobs does not include performing discovery tasks related to this type of litigation. We don't anticipate the need for that type of work in the near future. If and when that does occur, though, that is what we do. We assist 100% hands-on. To the extent that you want us there, we would be there assisting with that type of discovery. Again, not anticipated, but if it occurs, we'd be ready to deal with it. Some of the potential damages for Winnebago County specifically that we'd like to focus on in pursuing these claims would relate to any costs necessary to remove, treat, remediate, dispose of the contamination that has historically potentially been caused by the use of AFFF. I know Whitman Airport historically had passenger service. The requirements of passenger service are the use and training with AFFF. So it is possible that there is PFAS contamination in the soil at Whitman due to the historic AFFF usage. Those are the types of things we would like to investigate and pursue in advance of and in conjunction with filing these claims against these defendants, 3M, DuPont, et cetera. As you may already be aware, PFAS is one of the most pressing environmental issues for public entities, given the impact that these chemicals can have on drinking water, can have on soil, can have on stormwater, wastewater. All of those types of facilities can be impacted and are impacted every day by these chemicals. And right now, the only potential cost recovery action is against the manufacturers who produce these substances historically, sold them, delivered them, and told entities like fire departments how to use them without acknowledging that the uses that were identified could result in serious contamination of natural resources. Given that, we think that the most proactive approach obviously is further investigating your claims, filing the suit, joining the MDL, and then continuing to pursue these claims along with the thousands of other public entities who are already pursuing claims against these defendants. Given all that, I think you know what our recommendation would be. It would be to retain counsel. We would provide a legal services contract for your review and signature. One thing to keep in mind is we work in these cases on a true contingency fee, meaning there are no costs, no out-of-pocket expenses for Winnebago County unless there is a recovery. That includes both fees and costs. So if you do not recover, we do not get paid. We do not come and seek expenses from you. Additionally, all legal expenses are covered by Baron and Bud on the front end and are only recovered once there is a recovery for the county. Once a legal services contract is initiated, we would recommend initiating a lawsuit in the MDL and then begin establishing the damages model based on the claims that Winnebago County has related to historic PFAS use within the county. I just said like a million words. I know there may be questions. Please feel free.
Jason, I have a question.
Absolutely.
So, obviously, you're going to have to test or take some soil samples.
Yes.
In the unlikelihood that the soil sample does not show any kind of PFAS material, would Winnebago County be obligated to pay for any of the services that your attorneys put forth or the labs put forth? Because obviously, I mean, we're a small county and we really have to, watch our pocketbook.
Of course.
Yeah.
The very easy and short answer is no. We again would front those costs. If there are no claims, then there would be no recovery. There would be no pursuit of those costs from you by us.
And when you talked about a contingency fee, basically the only time you folks would get the contingency fee is if you prevailed. I referenced the fact that there is also local counsel. That 25% you referenced includes the local counsel piece. Is that correct?
It absolutely does. It includes all counsel.
Okay.
It also potentially includes, in the event that there are, when an MDL occurs like this and there is a settlement, sometimes they're not called class fees, but essentially fees that are shared by all plaintiffs who recover. Those potential class fees are also included in that 25%. So you are capped at 25% for all attorneys and all attorneys' fees.
And if I can also just follow up on a question to Chris that I know you touched on, Jason. So you have been through a portion of this litigation for personal injury claims. Is that correct?
Well, the personal injury claims are being litigated right now. I know we have some personal injury claims, but really the focus of our practice for the environmental litigation group is on the public entities.
Right, but what I'm really concerned about is the fact that you've gotten discovery from these defendants. So if anything, if the county board decided to get involved in this litigation, it perhaps would be on a faster track than the initial steps. Is that correct? The initial litigation?
Yes, exactly. So the MDL was formed very late 2018, early 2019, and the drinking water settlements were transacted in 2023. So it was about 4 or 5 years. But as you mentioned, all that discovery against the defendants has already been done. So we're not starting from square one for airport claims like we did back in 2019 when we very first started the MDL. So yes.
Okay.
And some of that discovery some of that discovery that Chris is talking about that's already been done are things like for 3M, for example. What did you know and when did you know it? Who did you sell your products to? What were the formulations of those products? All of that work is done in the same context for all of these types of claims: drinking water, personal injury, property damage. So that work will not have to be repeated. The only potential work that remains is for bellwether plaintiffs, meaning of all these hundreds or thousands of public entities who have filed a lawsuit for these particular types of claims, the court wants to select a small group, 10 or 12, to do more discovery on the plaintiff side to find out what the damages look like on a wider scale for everyone. It's highly unlikely that Winnebago County would be selected as a bellwether. So that portion of the discovery would not even have to be undertaken by Winnebago County at any point. The only discovery that does have to be undertaken by every single plaintiff who files is, again, the plaintiff fact sheet, which is a 3 or 4 page questionnaire, which Chris and I have filled out now dozens and dozens and dozens of times for other plaintiffs. So we have that sort of down to a science, and it requires very minimal legwork on your end to get that questionnaire filled out.
But if in the unlikely chance Winnebago County was chosen to be a bellwether, your firms would obviously assist Winnebago County since they're getting a contingency fee?
Absolutely. Our primary role at that point would be completing the discovery process for you, including undertaking as much of the work as we could on your end. Things like document identification, retrieval, and production, identifying witnesses, talking to witnesses, filling out written discovery, interrogatories, requests for production, things like that. That would all be work that would be done by us. And again, that is work that we have done in these cases and are currently doing in these cases related to drinking water and personal injury claims. So it is a process that we understand and we've undertaken, again, many times in this context, but dozens and dozens of times in the greater context of these MDLs for these contamination claims.
Thank you. I will now allow the supervisors to ask any questions. I don't want to
Supervisor
hog the
Hanson?
time.
Thank you, gentlemen. We had brief discussion last night at our Judiciary and Public Safety meeting, and Corporation Counsel just proffered my biggest question as far as cost goes in that. One of the things, though, that I did just pick up on that you were saying possibly how this may have begun initially in 2019, decisions in 2023, possibly this being a little bit more fast-tracked for 7 years or less. The one thing that I didn't see in any of the paperwork we have in front of us is any language that time is of the essence. Is there a time is of the essence for Winnebago County in signing on this right now?
Time, yes. I would say the sooner you can sign on and get involved, the better, for a couple of different reasons. One, we don't know the exact timeline. It could be that, and I'm absolutely making this up, do not put any force into this. Next week, these defendants get together and say, we want to resolve airport claims. For the entities who have claims filed at that point, there's a potential for a greater recovery if you have a claim filed. On the other side of that is because the impacts of PFAS are now known and they're widely known. And we know that defendants were doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, and that information is publicly available. There is the potential for statutes of limitations, statutes of repose arguments if entities wait and don't pursue claims now. For example, 3M may argue that anyone who files 5 years from now is 5 years late because they could have and they should have filed these claims 5 years ago when you knew about the problem, when you knew that PFAS was an issue. I don't know the specific ins and outs of Wisconsin statute of limitations, statute of repose law, but they are pretty consistent across the country where the longer you wait, the more problematic it could be in the end on a motion to dismiss claim for failing to pursue your claims in a timely fashion. That is one of the main things that scare us on our end is the longer one waits, the more potential there is for that kind of argument down the road.
That's what I was beginning to gather based on what you said. And my absolute apologies, I forgot to thank you first and foremost for appearing tonight. Very grateful. Thank you.
The pleasure is absolutely all ours. This is our passion, is pursuing these types of claims for entities like Winnebago County. So thank you for having us.
Supervisor O'Brien?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are real quick questions, but have we received any public complaints regarding PFAS? Number two, I have three. Number two is there an acceptable amount of PFAS? And number three is, with the exception of AFFF, do you think we have any additional exposure to PFAS?
Yeah, so as far as claims are concerned, I'm unaware of any claims for Winnebago County. That'd probably be a question for council. typically claims related to PFAS are not made against the counties, and they're not made against fire departments, and they're not made against airports because, again, these end users of this product were using it in the way that the manufacturers told them to use it. So what is the actual potential claim against those types of public entities? From our perspective, there is no good basis for a claim. As far as acceptable amounts, the EPA has set drinking water standards at 4 parts per trillion for PFOA and PFOS, which are two of the main primary constituents that everyone's concerned about as it relates to PFAS. There are not soil limitations set by the EPA, but the concern is if you've got PFAS in your soil, PFAS migrates and it gets into groundwater, and now you've got a drinking water problem. So the only way to deal with that is to remove and remediate the PFAS from the soil. I don't know what we hope is that we go out and do sampling and you have zero PFAS. That's the end goal. Zero PFAS is the home run in this situation. But what I don't know is if we go out and sample, what does the PFAS level look like if it's something other than zero? When it comes to soil contamination, again, I don't think there's an acceptable level, but I don't think there's an unacceptable level at this point, if that makes sense.
Very good. And with the exception of AFFF, do you think we have any additional exposures to any of the other chemicals?
One of the really difficult things about PFAS is tracing the source of contamination. The easiest place to trace it is at an airport because we know where it came from. It came from the use of firefighting foam at the airport. But there are instances and numerous instances where PFAS has been found in places like soil and drinking water that are not near an airport. It's gotten there somehow, and we're not really sure how. The only thing we do know is that PFAS itself is the man-made chemical that is the problem. We know that the man-made chemical was manufactured by these particular defendants, and regardless of how it got to that one place, we know where it came from. So when you say, is there exposure from other types of products? Generally, the answer is no, because it's hard to trace them to other products unless you have a very specific use. If you had a manufacturing facility in the county that was producing paper, there's a potential for PFAS contamination related to those types of manufacturing facilities. But again, those manufacturing facilities, in some respect, are using the product that they're provided. We do have claims against end users like that in a manufacturing setting because they're savvy end users. They know what these products are when they're using them. So they have a little bit of the same liability as the front line manufacturers of PFAS. But from a public entity perspective, we don't see this as being a situation where you have potential liability based on exposure from other sources.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, what about landfills? Is that another potential issue?
Absolutely. One of the main areas that we're seeing potential property damage claims are airports, fire training facilities and fire stations where foam was historically used, wastewater facilities, because if you have PFAS in your drinking water, you also have PFAS in your wastewater. And then finally, landfills, because PFAS containing products eventually end up in a landfill, and the PFAS continues to leach from those products into the leachate, the soil, and the groundwater adjacent to and on top of the landfill. So yeah, if Winnebago County's got landfills, there's a likelihood that there's PFAS there as well. And again, those are the types of property damage claims where we can undertake the sampling necessary to determine the levels.
Supervisor Bender?
Just out of curiosity, it says you take 25% of the gross recovery. What are we looking at as far as dollar-wise for recovery? And that way we'd have an idea of what your wages would be.
I would be lying to you if I told you I had any idea what the answer to that question was. But I can tell you this. We have resolved hundreds of claims for public entities who are drinking water providers. Those claims were part of the billion settlement that we keep talking about. The recoveries for those entities range from low to mid six-figure recoveries up to 8 and 9-figure recoveries. So it all depends on several factors. But one, what is the potential size of the recovery, whether it's through a judgment or a settlement? How is that settlement or judgment being split up, and between how many entities is it being split up? But this is not the type of situation where you get notification of a class action settlement and you submit your name and you end up with a coupon. It's not that type of claim. These are significant damage amounts for each public entity that we are pursuing. Again, based on whatever their contamination levels are. If you've got zero PFAS, you don't have any damage. That's the ideal situation for everyone.
Sure.
But depending on the levels that you have, and depending on what you've got to do to address those levels, this is not a cheap fix. It is sort of the bottom line.
Yeah, and I would just add that the investigation report that an environmental firm would have to do to begin the process of cleaning up PFAS is a six-figure price tag, hundreds of thousands of dollars, let alone the actual cleanup, and it's more than likely over seven figures for a cleanup value for PFAS contamination at an airport.
And just to give you full appreciation of the issue, one thing to keep in mind is it is not possible for these manufacturers to compensate every injured party for every dollar that they are potentially going to have to spend on this issue going forward.
Right.
Those companies would simply file bankruptcy and be gone.
I guess one of my concerns would be, let's say if it was a $1 million settlement and we had to pay you $250,000, well, then the county would actually have to pay, if it was gonna cost $1 million to clean the land up, we'd be on the hook for $250,000. Because we
Yeah,
paid
and
you
that's-
a quarter of it for getting the $1 million for us, but bottom end, we would still have to contribute some funds to make everybody whole.
And that is a fair argument and a fair idea to put forward. Yes, that is true. That is absolutely true.
Thank you.
But what I don't know is how much your damages are, and I don't know what the potential resolution is. The worst case scenario is at some point in the future you have $1 million price tag, but you don't have any of that money through compensation from these manufacturers. That's the biggest concern from my perspective. Is we want to get you as close to whole as we can by pursuing these claims. One, not knowing what whole looks like at this point, and two, not knowing what these manufacturers are going to be able to put forth to get close to whole. Does that make sense?
Yep, I understand. Thank you.
Supervisor Hens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This probably affects my district as much, if not more so than most other districts, just because my district covers around three sides of the airport. And on top of that, we had on our south side of Oshkosh, we had artesian springs and aquifers all through the area. That's why we had the breweries on the south side of Oshkosh. When I grew up, we all had wells in our yard. We all had pumps and wells in our yards, and and all that just kind of went away. And I'm not saying that's because of AFFF or anything like that, but I'm saying the potential is there because this district surrounds the airport, and that all that groundwater is underneath there. Not only that, there was a plane crash on Doty Street in the 1990s that I'm sure they dumped plenty of AFFF right in the middle of a neighborhood. And that wasn't even at the airport. But my concern, I guess, because especially with being a Navy veteran, we've been told for years now about the AFFF contamination, because when we go through boot camp, we all learn how to fight fires, because you can't call a fire department when you're on a ship. And we all learn with foam and everything else. And I guess I'm concerned about the fire and I know they're not county personnel, but the city firefighters were at the county fire station, and they were the ones doing all the training and everything else. And I'm just wondering, is this going to cover them in this as well? Not saying I'm putting them above the county in any way, but I do think that, you talk natural resources and water tables all you want, but you also have the individuals that were hands-on using this in basically our building. So I don't know, are they going to be covered with this as well?
It's a great question. Strictly speaking, as it relates to the county's claims, no. But when we talk about the personal injury claims that are part of this MDL, those are the types of claims that people are pursuing. It's firefighters, it's Navy veterans who had direct contact with these types of foams. And the primary diseases that the court is now addressing are things like kidney cancer and I believe liver cancer. So yes, there is a potential avenue for recovery for those individuals, but it is not strictly related to the county's claim that we would file in the MDL against the manufacturers. The county's claim is truly strictly a cost recovery claim for damage to county property.
Thank you.
Supervisor
But yes, I hear your concern, and that is absolutely one of the things that the court is looking at right now and focusing on are those personal injury claims for the types of individuals that you just identified.
Yeah, and that we know there are many thousands of firefighters with personal injury claims in the MDL, but like Jason said, they're just completely separate claims.
Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation. Couple quick questions. Number one, are you the only firm that's working on this in the United States, or are there other firms that are doing this kind of work?
There are dozens and dozens of other firms who are doing this type of work. I think I'm safe in saying though that our firm and the Kosich firm are the firms that are most highly focused on public entity claims. There are other firms representing public entities, yes, but those firms are also involved with various other types of claims for individuals, for companies. Our main focus, though, is the public entity type claim. But yet, the long and short is yes, this is a massive MDL with thousands and thousands of plaintiffs. So there are hundreds and hundreds of law firms involved.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then, why are you coming to Winnebago County? How did you come to the conclusion that you're going to come to Winnebago County and do this presentation, or how did you pick Winnebago County? Was it our soil composition that holds PFAS, or walk me through that thought process?
Winnebago County is a special place, I know that. But from our perspective, all public entities who have these types of problems are, in our minds, in need of pursuing them. And because this is what we do, we take great pride in helping you pursue these types of claims. The main factor, I think, at this point is the identification of the airport and the historical use of AFFF at the airport. We've taken a look at all Part 139 airports throughout the country. I know Whitman is no longer a 139, but historically it was, and so there was AFFF usage. So I think the identification there is one of the main driving factors. But inevitably, when we come and talk to boards like yourself, and when we get in a room with the individuals at the county, they talk about things like, well, we've got a landfill, and we know that there were things going on at the landfill, or we've got this piece of property that was adjacent to this factory, and we were a little concerned about that. So, because PFAS is such a global issue at this point, there is potential claims everywhere. But our focus is the public entities. We do represent other Wisconsin entities. We represented Eau Claire and Green Bay in the drinking water piece of this. We represent Dane County currently. So I don't know that there's a single specific factor that brought us to Winnebago County, other than the idea that we'd be honored to represent you and help you pursue these claims to try and recover some of the costs that we believe are going to be required going forward.
And I should just add that I learned about this through counsel for Wisconsin Counties Association, who gave this presentation to corp councils and said, okay, counties, any of you that may have airports may want to look into this. And so here we are tonight.
That makes all the sense.
Yeah.
I thought Supervisor O'Brien kind of asked my question about that any other past litigation at the airport that, you know, this was like made public or through other entities that, hey, we know there's a problem out there at the airport. We're gonna follow the tracks there. So that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I don't think this is a situation where we know that there's a problem at the airport. Again, my hope is there's not. But our experience is that if you're a Part 139 or formerly a Part 139, then more likely than not, there are areas on the airport that have PFAS in the soil.
Supervisor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. Corp Counsel kind of stole my question a little bit, but just want to let you know, in Winnebago County, we have 3 closed landfill sites. One that is an older site that is not a line site. We know there's some issues there. We also have a paper mill sludge site that is closed, along with the Sunnyview site that is now closed and is a newer site, hopefully with less problems. But all of those leachades are ending up headed to the Oshkosh treatment facility and eventually ending up in Lake Winnebago. So I don't know if anybody ever threw any discarded McDonald's paperworks in our dump, but in our landfill, but I'm thinking it could have happened. So it's a bigger problem, I believe, than just Whitman Airport.
And that is absolutely the case that we typically see is once we get a services agreement signed and we start getting in there and actually investigating what you've got going on and doing the testing, there are potentially these other types of properties that have issues. Hopefully an older landfill may not have it because the PFAS usage post-dated it, maybe. But you're right. We all remember the styrofoam hamburger containers that we used to get from McDonald's back in the 70s and 80s. Those are in a landfill somewhere. So the potential for PFAS from those is significant. So yeah, those are the types of properties that we would investigate, do sampling at, and determine what a potential damages model looks like.
And the landfills are pretty straightforward to test because they usually have monitoring wells, whether it's testing the leachate or the groundwater monitoring wells. Those are fairly straightforward to test.
We have thousands of monitoring wells, I believe, so.
Supervisor Laux.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your presentation. First thing, I have 2 things. The first thing is that I think you should be aware of the litigation that not so much the board, but the DNR and Wildlife, Fish and Game were involved in for years and years and years, starting in 1998 with PCBs in the Fox River. It was very long. It was estimated to cost $750 million to clean up. That is not what we got, and nowhere near what we got.
Right.
The second thing is, going back to Supervisor Hintz and his district, it looks like there might be some kind of stream if you look at a map, and it like ends at the end of the airport and then comes back out and goes into Stony Brook Bay. And I'm just wondering if any of the PFAS from the airport are being dumped into Stony Beach Road Bay, and if you would be testing that at all for PFAS levels.
Yeah, the typical investigation at an airport comes in phases. The first part of the investigation is we talk to airport staff and find out, hey, where were you storing AFFF? Where were you testing your systems with AFFF? And typically an airport has like a lot somewhere where they did everything. And the hope is that the lot is as far away from any running water as possible. If it's not, then we would do sampling at any of the adjacent locations to determine the extent of the contamination. The second part of the investigation would then be whose foam was it? And who can we identify? So the first is figuring out where your problem is. Second is figuring out where your problem came from. But those are all typical questions that get answered. Absolutely. And as it relates to the PCB issue, fully understand the litigation. I don't know about it directly. I don't have any personal knowledge of that particular issue, but we have done a lot of work with PCBs. We have been generally adjacent to Superfund site cleanups, and we know how long those can last, and how impactful they can be from a cost perspective. We don't necessarily view this in that regard as far as the requirements for cleanup, because these are not Superfund sites at this point, and we don't foresee the EPA pursuing those lines of action because it would be impossible. Every square inch in America would be a Superfund site if they went that route with PFAS. So it would be a more limited potential cleanup. But again, those are the types of things that we start putting together in a damage model. Can we identify a specific area at the airport where PFAS was used? Can that soil be remediated? And what is the cost of remediating that soil? Is this an issue with groundwater coming from the airport? What does remediation of PFAS from that groundwater look like? How do we get PFAS out of the leachate from the landfills? Those are all the questions we get answered, and again, develop that damages model so that we can pursue these claims with these defendants.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone on Zoom? Okay, that ends. I thank you, gentlemen, for this nice presentation. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. So,
Yeah, thank you all, and stay warm and stay safe out on the roads.
next up is Supervisor Hancock Cook with identifying good data.
Thank you. It'll take me a second to set up my computer. I know you'll pull up the presentation, but I just put it in presentation mode so that you guys can see the slides as big as they can be. There. I know it's challenging when the speaker is having to look back all the time to make sure they're on the right slide, so I'm doing it from my computer as soon as my computer decides to talk to me again. Oh, went one too far. All right, the reason I'm here tonight, oh, I'm on the wrong slide. There we go. The reason I'm here tonight is because I know that in our experience as county board members, we see reports, we see data coming through various channels. Sometimes there's presentations with data in them, and I want to make sure that we are all good, cautious perceivers of what data we're receiving. I would like to highlight that I got to see a presentation from Forward Analytics at the county board, or the Wisconsin County Association annual conference last September. There's numbers of workshops you can attend if you go, and I always love going to learn new things, but in this particular instance, I wanted to see how Forward Analytics presented this kind of data. Forward Analytics you receive magazines from them and reports. This is one of the examples when you see that FA. This is the analytical arm of the county association. And they are, I believe, housed even in the same building. The Green Book is also produced by FA, Forward Analytics. And the gentlemen on the slides are available to talk to you anytime you want to ask them questions about anything in these books or other data about Wisconsin. So I just wanted you to know that that's a resource we have. And as we move forward, this presentation, I have adapted it a little bit. I've cut out some slides. There is more in it, and I will send you a copy of their original presentation if you care to look at it. So as I said last September, I got to attend this conference, and they were giving examples of how you can get fooled by data. And I have to use the other side of my mouse. Sorry, I use a left-handed mouse. And if I get my slide in the right place, so we go to the next slide, where we get to see the Chevy ad. And the Chevy ad was used actually in 1992, trying to prove that Chevy trucks were clearly and fabulously better than any other trucks on the road because their reliability ratings were so high. Can anybody read the y-axis on this graph? No. Even in your slides, you probably can't read it. When that happens, you need to ask why you can't read that graph. Why didn't they give you that information? When I was doing presentations for our management, and when I worked in the industries, we always wanted to put as much as we possibly could on the graph. A, because we like to show off that we knew a lot of stuff, but B, it meant that we were sharing all the information we possibly could in the most compact way. Now, on this slide, you can't tell a whole lot about how you think that Nissan trucks are really awful and Chevy trucks are fabulous, right? Well, as we look at the next slide, we'll see that if you can now, yes, you can see that axis. The y-axis shows that the difference between the worst truck and the best truck is only about 3%. If I had a 95% reliable truck, I'd be pretty happy, as long as it's black, right? We're all happy. So what they're trying to tell you is not the full story if they aren't giving you this kind of information. And the next thing, we can see a better visual representation of this graph, because now we can see if we actually use the full y-axis, that there's almost no difference in these numbers. But they wanted you to think there was. And the other thing that we've now done is we've given you the absolute value, so you don't have to sort of squint across from between 80 and 100% and try and figure out how different those bars are. You put the real value on there. If I had access to this data, I could have done the next step, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But I just wanted to make sure that you're seeing those two things. One, you can read the axes. You are fully using the y-axis or the x-axis to give you the full visual of the data. And then finally, we want to see, is there more we can understand? Well, I might think 95 and 98 isn't a very big difference, but is it statistically different? Well, we don't have any idea from looking at this data. None. So if you were more responsible about this data, you would show it in this way. I'm sorry, I had to use a different graph for this, but you can see these bars. These are called error bars. They're a 95% confidence interval, or a confidence interval that tells you if the bar, let's say the bottom black bar on any of those overlaps the other ones, then there's no difference. If those bars are not completely separated, then you can't say statistically that these are different piles of data. So I can't show you this on the Chevy truck data, but I'm guessing there probably wasn't a whole lot, the confidence interval wouldn't have separated that data. So again, we're trying to make sure that we understand fully how valuable this data might be to us. The other thing that's important to note is how many tests did they do? You know, if I only ask 4 people, I might have a different answer than if I asked 600 people. So that's another thing that we need to be asking when we're seeing data. What does that look like? So confidence intervals, what's the next thing I want to say? So are we 50% sure or are we 95% sure? When you set your confidence intervals, you get to decide how sure you want to be. And so that will change the level of those. So if I wanted to be 50% sure, those confidence intervals are going to be huge, and everything overlaps and nothing's different. So I just wanted to highlight that. Then the next one is where we see the classic correlation versus causality issues. In this instance, we have a line graph showing a relationship between 2 data series. They seem to be both going up between 2001 and 2021. But is there, when this doesn't identify what they are yet, but when we see what they identify, when they identify what they are, we'll have to say, well, do I think there's a good reason why there might be a difference there? That brings you to wondering, what was the hypothesis for the testing? What question are you trying to answer? And so that's an important thing to have decided before you collect any data at all. In this instance, it's ticket prices at North American theaters and butter consumption per capita. Would those two things be in our minds be related? Would you start consuming more butter because the price on movie tickets went up? I don't think so. So that's why sometimes when we see these data, another classic is the one that in the early 1900s, they found that increased attendance at religious services and there was an increase in illegal drug use in the population. Probably not related, but they both went up. They both had an increase at that time and people were worried about it. Not related. So we want to make sure we're understanding if the data, the hypothesis that these two things are related makes any sense whatsoever. And then I'm not going to go through all of these fine bullet points, but we want to be thinking about how do we evaluate data that we receive? How do we evaluate the conclusions of the data? Are we addressing county challenges using data when it's possible? And that's one of the things the data exchange helps us to do that. We have Health and Human Services has really good data people to help us out if we have questions. So use those resources. And where can the data be found and is it high quality? High quality meaning you know the source, you know you can trust the source, you know that it might be, or that you're getting it from a paper that was from a peer-reviewed journal. Other people looked at it, other academicians looked at it and said, yeah, that's probably valid. But if you're just getting it from your buddy who said, I asked 5 people and this is what they said, might not be the same level of rigor. And you can read this, all the places you could get data. I want to highlight this last bullet point, or the last part, where, well, first I want to say, I know that we have probably all received surveys in the mail that have clearly leading questions. Has anybody seen any of those where they're trying to get you to answer a certain way and respond to them? I've seen a number of those. So when we're talking about generating data using our own surveys or someone else using their own surveys, we want to make sure the questions are neutral. We want to make sure that there are enough responses for us to act on the data and believe it's valid. So if I'm at the farmer's market and I'm asking questions, am I asking them in a neutral way or a leading way? Well, I'm probably leading them. But the other thing is that have I got enough data to actually make any conclusions whatsoever? I got 65 responses. I know there's X thousand people who live in Neenah. Probably not a really good sample size for making any conclusions. And really, who goes to farmers markets? That's a segment of the population, not the whole population. So I know that the data is going to be skewed just from doing that. But I want to make sure that you're thinking about this when you're looking at data that's being presented to you. And I already highlighted, are there enough responses to make conclusions? And if we collect small amounts of data, you'll see greater influence in outlier responses. So if you give everybody like a scale of 1 to 10, and most people are 5, but some people are 10s and some people are 1s, or there's a couple of 10s, but you only had 6 responses, those 10s are really going to skew you towards that upper end of the data. And so this is just another way as you look through your data, ways that you can evaluate it. And one thing that's really key is, can you track down the original source of the information? If you're being responsible, you'll cite the original source in your graph or your table. And one of the things that they pointed out in this, and they have in the further presentation, is when we're using AI, they don't use AI to give them answers. They use AI to know where to look to find the data. So they use it for the sources, and then they go look at the source data. Because you can be pretty sure that's going to be a place you can find the citations of how it was created. And then the other thing is, sometimes when it's reported in a funny way, like that first Chevy graph, why would it be reported that way? Well, I'm pretty sure Chevy wanted us to think they had the best trucks. So we can see that sometimes when data is reported in a certain way, you can probably see the skew of what conclusion the presenter might want if they're not giving you the full picture. So a couple things, I'll leave you with the things I want you to remember. There should be a clear statement of what hypothesis is being tested. What are you trying to evaluate when you're showing me this data? What was your idea, and did you prove it or not prove it? How big is the sample size? Were the time frames in which the samples were collected comparable? And were the data all collected in a similar way? Or were some done by phone survey, some done by paper survey, some done by, standing in the street and asking people questions? All of that data should not be put together because you're not collecting it the same way. And then the other point is that percentage values should include the denominator of the calculation every single time, because that will tell you how many samples did they take. It's in that. It's right there. And so did they sample 1,000 people? Because 80% of 1,000 is a whole lot different than 80% of 10. So those are the things I want you to remember. I just found out today, these two gentlemen were the analytics guys, and Dale Knapp retired on December 31st. So Kevin Dosboy is now the director of this department. So if you want to use an email, do not use Dale's because he won't answer. And I just wanted to highlight that this is something that we don't see a whole lot of, but when we do see it, we can be confused by it, and I hope that you'll remember to ask a couple of key questions as you look at data. Does anybody have any questions for me now? I know it's getting late. Oh. Conley does, and Stephanie does.
I don't see anybody.
Conley's got his mic on.
Supervisor
Thank you.
Hanson?
Oh, I am so sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to hear a kindred spirit that wants to ask and question data. For example, last term, when former Supervisor Duffy and I were presenting data, one report was handed back to me. It was an after-action report, and it was literally handed back to me and said, "That's a Republican report." That wasn't why I presented it. It had nothing to do with politics, but just the fact that we were going to look and examine other data. For example, there was a time when I was mentioning data from the World Council for Health. The response was, well, that's not the World Health Organization. My hunger for data is never one that is right or one that is wrong, but what we can find in the middle. You brought up an extremely valid point. In a former life before real estate and development, what gave me the money for that is my wife and I had a manufacturing company, and most of that was in cosmetics. You can absolutely imagine, probably next to textiles, is probably one of the most regulated and report-heavy, data-heavy things that you have to present to your suppliers or your buyers. So what I learned from that is when I am looking at data, I don't care who's bringing it to me. I ask who asked for the data, who paid for the data, and why are they asking for the data? I ask those questions first as we're going through that, and I am so deeply grateful to hear your interest in this as well, that what is presented to us sometimes is not always face value, and that we should drill down. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Supervisor Holt?
My questions have already been answered.
She's done.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank
Anyone
you very
else?
much for.
Okay, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
For doing that. Vice Chairman Fari. Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. We are adjourned.
Wow, before you ever sat down.